So in a recent interview with Sean Zattel, Bob Arum comes out and says that he feels that Terrence Crawford is a better boxer, athlete, and talent than Canelo Alvarez, and that he also thinks that Terrence Crawford would have beat Mayweather and Canelo in their prime, uh, which is pretty big of a statement to say. Um, the man is actually saying more now that he's not promoting him than he was before. Not to say that it was any kind of witch hunt out there, but that is some pretty extreme statements to make. People would and people never blame Bob on age because he's a very sharp individual when it comes to thinking and responding to a lot of questions. It's a lot of people that's online on the internet that's 20, 30 years old that can't respond to a boxing question like Bob Arum can, and he's almost like 100 years old. So that just shows how sharp he is and how much he actually knows about boxing. But he just gave a perfect breakdown of what I've been telling people for years. Terrence Crawford is on the verge of being a better fighter than a lot of these guys, even Floyd or Canelo. People don't want to acknowledge that. And they feel like, oh man, this guy's just an ordinary guy. Well, guess what? He made Hall of Famers look ordinary. He's made Hall of Famers look ordinary. Think about that. He's made Hall of Famers look ordinary. So Bob Arum's already seen what's going on. He knows what type of fighter Terrence Crawford is. He knows people that's tried to avoid certain fights with this guy. He knows what people have said behind the scenes about Terrence Crawford. He knows what other boxers have said about Terrence Crawford, other legends. He knows the responses he gets with a Terrence Crawford that he hasn't got when it comes to Floyd Mayweather. He knows that it was easier to make fights with Terrence Crawford. He knows that more people probably avoided Terrence Crawford than they did Floyd Mayweather. You didn't have promotional companies out openly saying that they didn't want a guy to do business with certain people in certain situations. When a promotional company comes out and you're one of the top guys and they don't want to do business with you, you're a boogeyman. You're dangerous. That's a boogeyman. Not a guy who sits up here and has a loss and now he calling everybody out, 30 some years old, and everybody like, oh, well, he a boogeyman. Nah. And you can be a boogeyman with a loss, but I'm talking about terrible defeat. We talking about boogeyman is somebody who's, scaring other grown men who do this professionally and trying to make millions of dollars that haven't made millions of dollars yet. So for somebody to be really scared, that means you're turning out millions of dollars when you haven't even made those millions yet. And you're not in a position of power. Now, if you're in a position of power, that makes sense. Like Anthony Joshua, he turned down big paydays, but he was able to get a bigger payday. He was in position of power. But as far as with a Canelo Alvarez, yeah, he's been the top guy over the years up until this point, and his name and everything else, and people knowing the people he's fought. That's had a lot to do with certain things, the matchups, the matchmaking. With Floyd Mayweather, not saying he had a built career. I'm just saying Floyd. People try to make it seem like Terrence Crawford had matchmaking in his career. He didn't have matchmaking. Terrence Crawford, it's a lot of guys on pound for pound. They got one or two wins, and everybody say, "Oh, they pound for pound now." Terrence Crawford ain't got no resume like that. As much as people say he ain't got no resume, that just goes to show that everybody that fought on Terrence Crawford's resume that was a champion in boxing, it just goes to show that people do not value anybody. They think that Kell Brook was trash. They think that Amir Khan, when he fought Canelo and Terrence Crawford, was trash. They think that Gamboa, when he fought Floyd and Tank, was trash. So when Kell Brook fought Triple G, Earl Spence, and Terrence Crawford, I guess he was trash. And, that's what they try to make it seem like. But after a while, you're going to have to explain why Canelo is trash if he loses this fight. And Bob Arum ain't trying to explain that. That's why he let the cat out of the bag now. I think he's gonna beat Floyd Mayweather. I think he can beat Floyd Mayweather and Canelo in his prime. Now that's just an opinion, but hey, he's throwing it out there. And he's not promoting the guy. I heard people say he don't like him and everything else. Well, for him not to like Terrence Crawford, and for Terrence Crawford, to straighten out Bob Arum is, for less of a better words, but um, allegedly. You know, everything looks good as far as his future and where he's at in boxing. He's one win away from being the greatest of this era.